NBA history is filled with countless what-ifs. What if Derrick Rose never suffered such a horrible knee injury? What if LeBron had chosen to sign with the Bulls rather than the Heat? What if all-time greats like Steve Nash or Carmelo Anthony just had one other piece on their team that brought them to a championship and changed their legacy forever? What if Giannis or Embiid were drafted by a different team? How would their careers turn out differently? These are all questions that will be answered in this video series as I resimulate the NBA from the 09-10 season up until the current year as we watch together as history writes itself. If you would like to watch me do this live, go to my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/bigbird4. The link is at the top of the description. For this series, I recreated the entire 09-10 roster from stars to benchwarmers to free agents. I calibrated for every single factor for each player, including ratings, contracts, their player growth and potential, and even appearance. If you want to get a more in-depth look at the roster I made, here's a video I made on that where I go through each team and show you all the players I included. In the previous season, LeBron dominated in the regular season and ended up with both MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, and led the Cavaliers to the top of the conference. Despite him being the only All-Star caliber player on the team, they were the favorites in the Eastern Conference, who were looking significantly weaker than previous seasons. The Magic and Celtics were both considered contenders as well, but they were facing each other in the first round as the 4th and 5th seed, and both teams had aging rosters. The Knicks had a terrific season, and ended up with the 2nd seed despite having no players who were named to the All-Star team. The Sixers were also a surprise, and ended up with the 3rd seed. In the West, there were a few teams that were considered contenders. The previous champions were able to lock the 1st seed again behind Kobe, but they had their work cut out for them in a stacked conference. The Spurs, Nuggets, Thunder, and Jazz all ended the season with over 50 wins, and were all potential contenders. In the playoffs, the Spurs, Thunder, and Magic were all knocked out in the first round by other contending teams. The Cavaliers also nearly lost to the Hawks, and very well may have if not for this terrible slip-up by the referees, who didn't notice Iguodala's chilling in the paint for 6 whole seconds. In the second round, the Nuggets swept the Jazz in 4, and the Celtics came back from a 3-1 series against the Cavaliers. This left us with the Nuggets and Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, and the Celtics and Sixers in the East. The Lakers suffered a lot of injuries during the playoffs, with Bynum and Odom both having to miss games, and Kobe and Gasol both suffering from bruised backs. This would cost them the series, and the Nuggets would make their first ever finals appearance. The aging Celtics, who were winded after 2 7-game series with the Cavs and Magic, were gassed out, and shockingly lost to the Sixers. Unfortunately for Philadelphia, they never really stood a chance in the finals, as the Nuggets swept them in 5 despite some great performances by Iggy. Carmelo Anthony was named Finals MVP, and won his first ring in his career. To start the offseason, Derek Fisher, Jason Williams, and a handful of others announced their retirement. In the draft lottery, the Trailblazers ended up with the 1st pick, followed by the Kings, Bucks, Suns, and Nets. The Blazers decided to go with the consensus number 1 pick and take John Wall, an elite all-around point guard from Kentucky. The Kings draft Gordon Hayward for their 2nd pick, which surprised analysts who thought that John Wall's teammate Boogie Cousins would be a better fit for them. He gets drafted 3rd by the Bucks, however, who draft him despite already having a solid big man in Larry Sanders and Andrew Bogut. Paul George drops to the 8th pick and gets taken by the Charlotte Bobcats. In a shocking move, the Wizards trade their 10th pick away to the Kings for Kevin Martin, and with it they draft an unknown prospect in Lance Stevenson. The Nuggets draft Eric Bledsoe for the 11th pick, and add another great point guard to their team to join Lawson and Billups. In the 2nd round, the Kings sneakily draft a little-known prospect by the name of Jeremy Lin, and the Clippers pick up Hassan Whiteside. Next up is free agency, and this year is probably the greatest offseason in NBA history. To give you a taste, here are some of the players available. We got LeBron, we got Wade, we got Duncan, Brandon Roy, Rondo, Chris Bosh. There's some great players in here. There were so many insane signings, I can't possibly go through all of them, so I'm just going to go through the most important ones in my opinion. I'm going to start with what I consider the 2 biggest signings of free agency. Dwayne Wade to the Sixers and Chris Bosh to the Nuggets. These 2 teams just faced each other in the finals in the previous year, and now they have both added another superstar to their squads. The Nuggets were still favored, as they had two superstars in Melo and Bosh, and Ty Lawson was showing flashes of potentially being a future superstar himself. However, the Sixers had a better defensive team, as both Wade and Iggy were first-team all-defense, and were also fantastic on the offensive end. The Sixers signed Rudy Gay as well to give their team another offensive threat. You would think these signings would have made it impossible for any other team to compete, but you'd be wrong. The Utah Jazz signed LeBron James to join Deron Williams and Carlos Bouzard, both in their primes. Brandon Roy joins the Hornets, who had nearly beaten the Lakers in the second round the previous season, and they were seen as potential contenders as well. They already had an all-star in Okafor and a superstar in Chris Paul, and Roy's offensive abilities was the exact piece their team needed. In a surprise twist, Duncan decided to part with the Spurs and signed with the Washington Wizards to join Arenas, Caron Butler, and now Kmart. While this team wasn't seen as too much of a threat, no one was counting them out purely because of Duncan's playoff greatness. Rajon Rondo signed with the Atlanta Hawks, which was a great pickup for them. Teague and Bibby were both great players, but they needed a passer to join the offensive threats of Joe Johnson and Josh Smith, and he added a lot more perimeter depth to their defense. They also picked up Al Harrington as well to give their team a little more depth. The Hawks nearly beat the Cavs without Rondo the previous season, so they were seen as the potential dark horse in the East. Some other notable signings were Nowitzki to the Bobcats, Aldridge to the Bulls, Lowry to the Suns, and Nash to the Pacers. In the first 20 games, the Nuggets dominate and top the Western Conference. They are followed by the Thunder, whose young trio of Durant, Westbrook, and Harden are coming into form, and are looking like they are trying to be contenders this year. The Spurs are still surprisingly in the top 5, despite losing Duncan, as Parker steps up his game and takes leadership. In the East, the Sixers are also on top, followed by the Hawks and Wizards, who have now regretted their free agent signings so far. The frontrunner for MVP at this point is Al Jefferson, who's averaging 33 points, 17 rebounds, and nearly 2 blocks, and has single-handedly led the Timberwolves to the 6th seed. However, just a few games later, Love breaks his hand and misses most of the season, causing the Wolves to drop hard. Halfway through the season, the Warriors move up the ranks and land the 4th seed behind some stellar performances behind Steph Curry and Stack Jack. The Jazz, who are unhappy with only being the 3rd seed, decide to trade away Kirilenko for an aging McGrady and Grant Hill. Kirilenko wasn't playing well this season, but the Nets were willing to give him a try as T-Mac wasn't performing well this season either. In the East, the Bobcats were surprising everyone over the 4th seed. Signing Nowitzki was a huge help, but rookie Paul George was also surprising everyone by averaging 21, 5, and 5. The All-Star teams looked shockingly similar to real life, with only a few differences. There were a lot of teammate swaps, with Al Jefferson replacing Kevin Love, Parker replacing Ginobili, and Harden replacing Westbrook. Steve Nash also redeemed himself this season with the Pacers, and was rewarded with an All-Star selection. Garnett, Ray Allen, and Dwight Howard were both injured halfway through the season, and instead we got Iguodala, Gilbert Arenas, and Danny Granger. And yet again, Stack Jack is an all-star despite Steph putting up almost twice as many points and assists. I suppose it's a consequence of the NBA being stacked with so many talented guards. The East dominate the West, and Tim Duncan is named All-Star MVP, going 11 for 11 from the field. Here are the teams that made the playoffs. Memphis and Phoenix squeezed in at the 7th and 8th seeds after ending their seasons well. Despite both teams not having any superstar, they both had a lot of depth in their teams, allowing them to come over top the Lakers, who struggled hard this year and missed the playoffs entirely. Bynum tore his Achilles halfway through the season, which definitely hurt them, but it was still a shock they weren't able to seed. The Eastern Conference was much stronger this season than last, which caused the Knicks to drop down to the 7th seed as opposed to being 2nd last year. The Bucks come in at 8th behind an aging Michael Redd and an emerging superstar in DeMarcus Cousins, who ended up winning Rookie of the Year. The Bulls also clinched the 6th seed behind LaMarcus Aldridge and Derrick Rose, who blossomed this season, winning Most Improved. Dwayne Wade wins his first MVP of his career, and deservedly so for leading the Sixers to the top seed in the East. Ginobili wins a back-to-back six-man trophy, and solidifies himself as the greatest six-man in NBA history. Dwight Howard wins Defensive Player of the Year, and leads the Magic to the best defense in the league, as well as the 4th seed. The biggest surprise in the NBA All-Team selection was sophomore Blake Griffin, who snuck his way into the 3rd team. This may as well have been his rookie season, as Griffin missed the majority of the previous season with injury. In the Western Conference, there wasn't much competition. The Nuggets blew out the Suns in 4 behind some stellar performances by Bosh and Melo. The Spurs swept the Hornets in 4, as both Parker and Ginobili dominated the offensive end and left Paul and Roy speechless. The Jazz defeated the Warriors in 4 as well, for missing Curry and Monta Ellis, who got injured early in Game 2. Memphis put up a fight against OKC, with rookie Wes Johnson showing a lot of promise, leading the Grizzlies to victory in Game 2, going 21-10 off the bench. However, that wasn't enough, and the Thunder win in just 5 games. The East thankfully was a bit more exciting, except for the Sixers-Bucks series, as DeMarcus Cousins gets injured in Game 1, and the Sixers win in 5. It was still somewhat of a close series, as Michael Redd showed up and was lights out behind the arc. He went 9 for 12 from 3 in Game 3, tying the record for the most threes scored in a single NBA playoff game. He went 8 for 11 the next game as well, but that just wasn't enough to pull the Bucks ahead. Orlando and Charlotte went to 7 games, both taking turns blowing the other team out. In the end, it was the Magic who ended up on top, as Howard essentially averaged 20 and 20 a game. It's pretty much the same story for the Wizards and Knicks, with Washington coming out on top, winning in 6. The most exciting series was definitely the Bulls versus the Hawks. Game 1 was a nail-biter, as Rose lays into this basket next to the rim to give the Bulls the lead, with only a little over a minute left in the game. Jeff Teague fires back with a sick post move and then quick lay-in, pulling the Hawks ahead. With just 4 seconds left, Teague pulls up for the open 3 to seal the deal, but misses it, and Rose grabs the rebound to go the other way. The Bulls are out of timeouts, so they're counting on him to pull up quickly and hit the shot. Rose pulls up from nearly half court and... With just 0.2 seconds left, the Hawks are toast. Jeff Teague gets the shot off in time but isn't able to score it, and the Bulls take Game 1. The Hawks take Game 2, but Rose scored 48 points and single-handedly kept the game competitive. Game 3 was another close one. With a minute and a half left, Jamal Crawford drives in the lane and drops in this fading floater. The Bulls miss in response, and Crawford takes it in again, and this time capitalizes on the and one, and ties the game up with his free throw. The Hawks again score in transition, this time with Joe Johnson, marking a 7-0 run. The Bulls miss yet again on their side, but Johan Petro grabs the rebound and gets fouled, going to the line. Despite only averaging 68% from the line, Petro comes in clutch and knocks down both, tying up the game. On the other end, Crawford again finds a way into the lane, but this time shows off his playmaking abilities and dishes it off to Horford, who converts on the layup. The Bulls have the ball with 24 seconds left on the clock, and Rose takes it up. They decide to feed the hot hand, and Rose delivers, knocking a floater over Horford's outstretched hand. This gives the Hawks 12 seconds to win the game. The Hawks also decide to feed their hot hand, and let Crawford do his thing. He drives in, jukes out Heinrich, and pulls up from 10 feet out, knocking down the close-range jumper. Rose throws a full-court lob for the win, but hits the front iron, and the Hawks take a lead in the series. Rose responds in Game 4 by scoring 42 points, and leads the Bulls to tie the series up at 2 apiece. Game 5 is a must-win for both teams, and they both come out for blood. With less than a minute left, Noah finds Rose cutting over, and he hits the shot, putting Chicago up by 2. Crawford gets fouled on the other end, and knocks down his free throws. Rose responds to the lay-in, and Crawford does the same, and the game is again tied up. The Bulls pass and going for a 2-for-1 as Aldridge shoots his ill-advised fadeaway with 20 seconds to go, and bricks it. Crawford dribbles out the clock, but misses the mid-range jumper, giving the Bulls 2 seconds to score a basket. Rose finds himself wide open out front, but Noah doesn't see him and passes it to Heinrich, who can't score the contested 3, and we're going into overtime. With a minute and a half, the Bulls are up by 5, but Crawford isn't ready to give up, and he scores an and one. They then pass it to Joe Johnson on the fast break, who knocks it down just inside the 3-point line. With seconds left to spare on the shot clock, the Bulls find Aldridge in the paint, who knocks down the shot, putting the Bulls back up. Crawford responds yet again by getting to the basket. On the other end, Rose finds Aldridge wide open next to the rim, and he puts the Bulls back up. Yet again Atlanta trusts in Crawford, and yet again he gets fouled and ties up the game. The Bulls now have possession with 20 seconds left on the clock. They pass it into Heinrich, who stumbles to the right and steps out of bounds, making it the Hawks' ball. Crawford again dribbles it out, but the Bulls clamp down on him, and we are yet again going into overtime. However, with this 3 from Horford with just 30 seconds left, the Hawks seal the deal, and they win Game 5. Unfortunately for the Bulls, Atlanta take over in Game 6 and blow them out by 20, winning the series.
The second round matchups in the West proved to be quite interesting. The Spurs had lost to the Nuggets in the first round last year, and were looking for payback. However, they never really stood a chance, as the Nuggets had gotten much better by adding Bosh to their team, and the Spurs had lost Duncan. They pushed it to 5 games, but the series was never really close. The other matchup was also a rematch from last season, as the Thunder had lost to the Jazz in 6 last year. However, this year their whole team had gotten better, with Durant emerging as a bona fide superstar, and Westbrook and Harden on the brink of stardom. However, the Jazz also had LeBron now, and weren't content with just losing in the second round. The Jazz win Game 1 behind a 40-point triple-double by LeBron. In Game 2, the Thunder are down by 4 with 22 seconds left, and they have possession. Harden finds Ibaka in the paint with no one around him, and he stuffs it in. The Thunder foul T-Mac, but he knocks down both his free throws. Westbrook brings it up and tries to score off the drive-in, but misses the layup. Ibaka grabs the rebound and finds Durant for 3, but he misses it, and the Thunder are now down 2 games. LeBron leads the Jazz to another victory with a 40-point triple-double in Game 3, and it looks like the Jazz are going to sweep. Game 4 is competitive as Maynard ties it up with a minute left in the game off this jumper. OKC responds with a 3 from John Salmons. LeBron gets in the post and hits a fadeaway on the other end. Harden takes no time to respond and drives straight to the hoop for a lay-in. The Jazz can't come up with another basket, so they foul Westbrook, who knocks down both his free throws, increasing the Thunder's lead to 5. LeBron is fouled while driving in, and he converts on both attempts. They foul Westbrook again, who only scores 1 free throw this time, but the Jazz aren't able to score 3 on the other end, and the game is over. The Thunder come back in Game 5 and win by a decent margin behind a 42-point showing by Westbrook, but LeBron finished them off in Game 6 in a narrow win. In the Eastern Conference, the Sixers faced the Magic, and in Game 1, Wade stole the show, leading Philly to blow Orlando out by 20. Game 2 is a little closer, with the Magic only up by 2 with a minute to go. However, they seal the deal pretty quickly behind a 3 from Rashad Lewis, and Jameer Nelson scoring his free throws, and tie the series at 1 apiece. In the next 2 games, Lou Williams comes out of nowhere and scores nearly 30 points in each game, putting the Sixers in the driver's seat. The Magic win Game 5 by 13, but lose in Game 6, despite Dwayne Wade going cold and finishing with a pathetic 11 points. The other series in the East is the Wizards and Hawks, who had a fantastic 7-game series. Unfortunately, I accidentally simulated through all the games, so I can't show you what happened in the closing moments of each game. What I can tell you though is in Game 7, the Hawks won by just 2 points, and Jamal Crawford was their go-to man, scoring 23 points.
The Western Conference matchup is exactly what every NBA fan was hoping for. LeBron's Utah Jazz versus Bosh and Melo's Denver Nuggets. It was expected to be a fantastic series, but things didn't seem to be looking that way as the Nuggets blew out the Jazz in Game 1 and 2, as Melo scored 30-point triple-doubles in both. LeBron also didn't seem like the player we were used to, and barely managed to score 20 points in both games. The Jazz turned things around in Game 3 behind a 25-point showing from T-Mac. The Nuggets again sweep in Game 4, but the Jazz hold on in Game 5, as LeBron has his first game where he scores 30 points. It all boils down to Game 6, and the Nuggets absolutely dominate, blowing them out by nearly 50 points as Lawson scores 25 and has 20 assists, solidifying himself as an NBA star. The Eastern Conference finalists were also the 2 favorites to make it there, as the Philadelphia 76ers faced off against the Atlanta Hawks. Game 1 is close, but the Sixers managed to pull ahead and win by 7. Game 2 is more of a blowout, as Wade again leads the Sixers to victory. Joe Johnson shows up in Game 3 and leads the Hawks to a nearly 40-point win. There was a lot riding on Game 4, and ends up being a close one. With a little over a minute left, Elton Brand slams in a dunk off the assist from Wade. Josh Smith tries to respond with a 3, but bricks it. With 30 seconds left, the Hawks call a timeout and discuss their game plan on how to come back from their 4-point deficit. They decide to go with a 2-for-1 with Rondo, who drives into the paint and sinks in the teardrop. They foul Wade, who scores his free throws and brings it back to a 2-possession game. The Hawks aren't able to get off a good shot, and Crawford completely misses a fadeaway from long range, and the Sixers take a 3-1 lead. At that point, it was too little too late, as the Hawks managed to win Game 5, but D. Wade seals the deal in Game 6, leading the Sixers to the NBA Finals for the 2nd year in a row.
Welcome to the NBA Finals.
This is it. We've got the rematch we were hoping for. But these teams aren't the same as they were last year. The Nuggets got lucky that the Lakers had so many injuries. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have made it to the finals. And the Sixers were lucky to be facing an aging Celtics roster who had faced off against title contenders in the first 2 rounds. They both had competent rosters, but weren't even considered contenders at the start of the playoffs. However, this year they both added a bunch of depth, and had blossoming young players in Jrue Holiday and Ty Lawson, and they were complete titans compared to the previous year. This was a showdown that was not going to be easy for either team, and neither team was going down without a fight. Game 1 was close, as the Nuggets were up 121 to 120 with a little over a minute to go. Rudy Gay manages to give the lead to the Sixers with a quick mid-range jumper, but Melo takes the lead right back with a slam off the assist from Lawson. The Nuggets run the same play back again, and they take a 3-point lead. The Sixers inbound it to Gay, who dishes it off to Thaddeus Young, who slams it in. Melo comes back the next play and displays his fantastic handles, juking out his defender and finishing the play with a light touch by the rim, banking it in. Gay can't convert on the other end, and the Nuggets take Game 1. The Sixers come back in Game 2, as Wade almost has a 31-point, 19-rebound 5x5, but comes just 1 steal and 1 block short. Melo responds at Game 3 and gives the Nuggets a 2-1 lead. Game 4 is another tight one, as the Nuggets are up by just 2 with 30 seconds to go. They're able to find Nene in the paint, who misses the contested shot, but Kenyon Martin slams it back in. The Sixers call a timeout, but end up turning the ball over the next possession, and the Nuggets take a 3-1 lead. Game 5 is another close one, as Melo gives the Nuggets a 1-point lead with a minute and 20 to go, as he converts on an and 1. Wade comes back the next play to hit it from mid-range, but Melo responds with a lay-in the next play. The Sixers come back up the court, but Maurice Spates gets called for an illegal screen, which he was not too happy about. Their next possession, Brand decides it's a good idea for him to try a fadeaway, and he misses it. But luckily, Wade was there for the rebound, and he gets an and 1. Or did he? Turns out his make didn't count, but he's still able to knock down his 2 free throws. The Nuggets inbound it to Melo, who finds Chris Bosh, who scores the wide-open jumper, giving them the lead with just 24 seconds to go. The Sixers don't take any time to respond, as Holiday passes to Wade in the paint for an easy lay-in. Melo takes it up the other way, but gets double-teamed, and has to pass it off to Kenyon Martin, who wasn't able to score the open 3, and the Sixers win Game 5. Game 6 is another close one, with the score tied at 117 with 30 seconds to go. Wade takes the ball up and finds Thaddeus Young inside, who puts Philly up by 2. The Nuggets call a timeout. They decide to ditch the play they'd drawn up as Bosh finds himself completely uncontested by the rim and ties the game up. The Sixers call a timeout, and they have 16 seconds to work with. Wade dribbles the ball out, but gets double-teamed at the last minute and passes it off to Thaddeus Young, who can't manage to knock down the 3, and we're going into overtime. The first few minutes there seems to be a contest, but Denver pulls away and takes a 5-point lead with only a minute left to go, and things do not look good for the Sixers. However, they weren't ready to give up that easily, as Wade drives in but quickly passes it out to Spates, who extends his range and hits the long 2. However, the Nuggets find Bosh wide open by the basket, and he brings their lead back up to 5. The Sixers fail to score on the other end, and just like that, the Nuggets are NBA champions once again. Carmelo Anthony wins back-to-back Finals MVP after averaging 32 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists, and proves all the doubters wrong. Bosh wins his first ring, and makes him the 3rd player in the 2003 draft class to win a ring before LeBron. The Denver Nuggets have established themselves as a dynasty now, but will they be able to three-peat? Will LeBron get his revenge next season? Who will Kevin Durant and Chris Paul sign with during free agency? Find out in my next installment of this series, or just catch me streaming live at Twitch at BigBird4. Also, while you're at it, go ahead and leave this video a like, and subscribe if you want to see more NBA content in the future. Until next time though, keep hooping.